Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. This is Steve Matley. Today I have Dr. Janice Bell. We've been talking about real estate investing, private lending, and Janice's journey going from the scientific community into the real estate community. And Janice, the next thing I want to talk to you about is you've evolved from just doing basic rentals to building a little bigger portfolio to learning how to do more elaborate deals to doing private lending to teaching other people, starting masterminds. And now you're actually putting together opportunities for other people to collaborate with you to fund projects. So if they're not sure where to go or how to get into real estate investing, you have a place where they can safely put a small amount of their money to put their toe in the water and see how that works without having to buy a place, negotiate their own contracts, go to Home Depot and buy all the stuff, do all the work, try to find a seller or property manage things. So tell us a little bit about what your new endeavors are there.
Okay, absolutely, Steve. So, as most investors start out with your basic rentals, then I moved into, the larger sort of apartment complex rentals. And then when the recession happened, I started doing flips because that's what was available to do here. So learning flips, learning to invest out of state, what markets are good. Did flips here in San Diego as well as in other markets like Phoenix and Sacramento. And just wanting to, once I saw how the funding worked, it seemed like that was a great way to expand a club because I know how long it takes to learn all that information. If you can invest with someone who already has the expertise, even while you still have your W-2 job, because a lot of the people who come to my club are engineers. They can be working in tech, biotech. They can really be working anywhere. But what happens is maybe they left an employer and moved to another employer and they have 3 or 4 old 401ks sitting there. What I do is educate them on how to consolidate all those into an IRA so they can invest. And what I like to do is bring in a speaker who's an expert in their area, whether it's your area like land development, apartments, notes, out-of-state markets, even a rental pool. And because that speaker's focused on what they do the best, then the investor who's passive and still working can come in and put their money into a deal and be getting a return on that deal where they can turn it over every 2 or 3 years and go into a different type of investing.
Right. Okay. And you and I have worked together on some of these things. Now, back when you first started 4 years ago, just a few months after you started your club, you actually had invited me to come speak at your club.
Absolutely.
And it was a fledgling club at the time. And I remember when I spoke, it was right after Thanksgiving, I believe. It was right after holiday. And of course, most people don't want to go to club meetings right after holiday, right? It's Christmas time now. You just got finished with Thanksgiving. And it was a small turnout. But what I learned about your club was it's not about going there because there's hundreds of people. It's going there because there is maybe a dozen people that are serious. Mm-hmm. And you get more than that sometimes at your clubs. I mean, you'll get a few dozen there sometimes. But even at that club where because of the timing of it, it was a small group, the people in there were all serious. And of those, that small group, the 90% of them that were there that night are still investors with me. And I know they invest in other things too.
Right.
And they're there because you helped teach them how to find money, how to vet projects, how to vet the managers of the projects, how to figure things out. And they are putting money in and it's working for them. I've actually had, some of them have been in projects that have already closed out and they've made quite a lot of money from our project, which is great. We love helping people out like that. And so I know you've got more of those coming up. Now, if somebody who's interested in that, I know here we're not selling any specific projects. Don't take that the wrong way if you're out there listening to this. We're not selling anything here. Mm-hmm. It's just really education. But a lot of people don't know those opportunities exist. They don't know that there's ways you can get involved in real estate without having to go buy your own property, come up with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket to get into it, do all that work, figure everything out, and then at the end of it find out that what they taught you on HGTV didn't work for you and you lost money. So that's a hard way to learn. When you collaborate with other people and you go into kind of a fund, a lot of people with a small amount of money equals enough money to do a good deal. And they all share the risk, and you have a very small amount of risk, and you don't have to know the expertise because the person running the deal has the expertise. But now there again, do your homework and make sure they do. Do your research. Don't just assume because somebody says they know what they're doing. Look at their history, talk to people, look at the research, cyber stalk them a lot, figure things out, right? There's information out there. We live in a fantastic age where it's really hard for people to hide their sins of the past, right? So you can find these things out. So if you're interested in that, again, connect with Janice, privatelendingmasters.club. And I strongly encourage you to try to attend one of her virtual meetings, or if you're anywhere in the Southern California area, it's worth the drive to go to one of her quarterly meetups that she does sometimes at microbrews and other restaurants and places like that, where there's a fun environment.
Right. You can also find us on Private Lending Masters on Meetup.
Okay.
And you have to make sure that you kind of hit San Diego when you're looking for the location. Even though we're online, say if you're in another city, you can still listen to it there. Exactly. And, I guess what I'd say about the lending is that a lot of people want to be able, even mobile home parks, storage units. So I usually have speakers in a broad variety of areas in land development, like what you do, building, apartment buildings, or value add, where people will take an older apartment building and renovate it. So there's many opportunities. Just understand it's not a REIT. It's not a publicly traded deal like you might find in a REIT. It's really direct lending to the person who's operating, the operator, who's doing the actual deal.
Right, and then there's quite a selection of them out there. As you mentioned, there's people that do value add apartment buildings. They'll buy these apartments using that fund. They fix them up, and then they raise all the rents because that's a nicer building now. And so now they've that's where they're getting their cash flow from. There are people that do this to do a series of fix and flip homes, or maybe you're funding people that are adding ADUs to the back of their rental properties, and they need to borrow that money.
Right, and they're expert in that area. One of the another one of my speakers has a pool of rental properties in the Midwest, and you can invest in that. So instead of you buying that one house, and when it's vacant, you have no income, your investment is spread out over 50 different rental properties that are professionally
like a
managed.
Mutual fund of real estate portfolios. Yeah, exactly. So,
and it's really something that it's in the IRS code that you can use your IRA money to do this. Most people just don't know about it, and they ask the question, why don't I? Because the stock funds in the stock market, they pay for advertising because they want you to, go with them and pay their fees. And I'm not saying don't invest in the stocks. We do the same thing ourselves. But it's just another avenue to diversify what you have, and you just do get a much better return.
Yeah, and I'd say over the last 2 years, people in the stock market investing probably have made somewhere in the tune of 3 to 4% return, I'm guessing, because it's been up and down all over the place. The stock market's very liquid. Anything that's liquid emotionally reacts to things. So when there's pandemics that happen across the world, when there's invasions on the other side of the world, these type of things affect it. It acts like an undisciplined 2-year-old. Where the real estate market is so non-liquid, it takes a while. I can't call somebody up today and say, sell all my real estate, and it's not done by tonight. It's going to take a while, and I have a lot of opportunity to change my mind and say, that was a bad, stupid thing I did. I'm gonna retract that now. I don't want to sell it after all, and so I have a chance to correct that. I'm not making emotional decisions then. It becomes more logical, and the real estate market has a lot more inertia to it. Now, having said that, when it does turn, it takes a lot longer to turn around again for the same reasons as we saw in the last a decade ago or so. But it's been doing very, very well. And so for people that have their retirement money and all they can do is a stock market, they've been on a bit of a roller coaster, and in the last few weeks they've shed a few tears. I would say the same thing if you're into the cyber currency market. You had your ups and downs. That's a real roller coaster. It's big thrills up and real spills coming down.
And that's open 24/7. So
yeah, exactly.
You can check that on the weekend and still see it go
and
go up and
grow
down.
your ulcers every minute. Yeah.
And one thing I'll say about the stock market, and people will say, well, the average is it goes up 7.5% a year, but what that doesn't factor in is when it goes down and you start from the bottom. So just from a math point of view, 7.5% is each year. Say it goes up 31 year and down 20. It's an average. But when you say you have 100,000 and it drops to 50,000, then what they're talking about is 7.5% on the 50,000.
That's right.
So when you do that average, it's not really considering the losses that you had in
it
between.
takes twice
it's
as
much
much.
lower.
It takes twice as much a percent in growth as it does in loss to make
Yes.
up the same difference. Exactly. Yeah.
People don't realize that. They just think of that number, and it's not consistent.
It's not consistent. Now, I'm not saying don't invest in stocks. I have stocks. I have mutual
too.
funds.
Yeah.
I have precious metals. I have lots of different things out there. Real estate's where I really make most of my money because it's what I understand and it's what I like and it's what works. The process of managing funds. Now, you manage some of your own funds, but you also help people get into funds that are not managed by yourself as well.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So I help people get into, with any of my speakers, if a speaker is doing a value-add apartment building that, I may not be investing in it, but my speaker has it, and I coach people through how to get that money from their old 401k into the IRA that has a company that's managing that money, and then how to get that money into the investment. So it's more of a coaching thing that I do for those particular people if I'm not the one running the project.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's good you have both because you're not forcing people into something because you are managing it. You have options. Say, look, I've got these I've got going, but there's all these over here too. And what do you like? Do you like notes? Do you like apartment buildings? Are you more comfortable with, flips? We're going to take another short break, and we come back. We're gonna wrap up our last segment. Just kind of summarize a few things here. This is Dr. Janice Bell, my guest today on Building Solid Foundations Radio. We're talking about real estate investing and private lending. And this is Steve Matley, your host. We'll be right back after this.